Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Denver Broncos versus Oakland Raiders Week 4 matchup based on analytics. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential NFL performance. We're only 3 weeks into the season, so it's not the biggest sample size ever. However, there will always be little nuggets of truth in every sample of data you see, which could become bigger nuggets of truth as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you're new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So let's start with this matchup. So when you look at the basic NFL stat comparison, so this basically looks at how the offense is performing overall relative to the rest of the NFL, how the defenses are performing relative to the rest of the NFL, how special teams is performing relative to the rest of the NFL, and then of course what the overall score is for everything. And so far through 3 weeks, the Denver Broncos are favored in this matchup overall. And let's get into some of the reasons, why. Well, first off, when it comes to the total D score, which is basically the defense's ability to prevent first downs, the Broncos have been much better at preventing first downs than the Raiders defense, and which isn't surprising. Like, Oakland Raiders defense was not very good last year, and they're still not that great this year. They've had flashes, they've had Hulk moments, like Andy Vanderdoes tossing a guy, but Andy Vanderdoes didn't toss a guy and then sack a guy, 6 times in the game. He just had a couple moments here and there. So again, that's the issue with this Raiders defense, is they have a lot of great moments, but they don't have a lot of continuity when it comes to their defense. And I think the Broncos are much better when it comes to the continuity department. And then when you look at the total offense score, which is basically the offense's ability to create first downs, it favors the Raiders versus the Broncos, who've had issues in terms of that. But when you look at the total O/D scores, so basically combining both those scores, the Denver Broncos defense favors it favors them. So basically, the overall defense of the Broncos plus the Broncos overall offense versus the Raiders offense and defense, it favors the Broncos because of that sort of issue. Then, of course, if you look at other sort of data points, so when it comes to turnover ratio, the Raiders are much better when it comes to not allowing a lot of turnovers compared to the Broncos. So I think this will be definitely something to consider when it comes to who will win this game, because the Raiders really don't turn the football over a lot, whereas the Broncos turn the football over a ton this year in particular. So that's just going to be something to kind of think about in this particular matchup. And then when you look at sack percentage, the Broncos have been pretty much not as good at preventing sacks as the Raiders, but the Raiders have been about average up to this point in terms of preventing sacks at this point. So that's definitely something to kind of worry about. And then, of course, when we look at offensive score percentage, the Raiders are much better in terms of creating points on every down compared to the Broncos through 3 weeks. Preventing points has been more so in the Broncos. Turnovers, neither one of these defenses turns the football over a ton. Creating sacks is actually more so in the Broncos at this point. They're actually pretty evenly matched in terms of their defense's ability to create sacks, but both are below average. Interceptions is on the Broncos side. In terms of special teams, punt return yardage is on Denver's side. Kick return yardage is on the Raiders' side. Preventing punt return yardage is on the Raiders' side, whereas preventing kick return yardage is on the Broncos' side. So it kind of cancels each other out. The Broncos are pretty decent in terms of preventing. The Broncos are pretty decent in terms of getting punt return yardage, but the Raiders' defense is pretty good in terms of preventing punt return yardage, and then vice versa. So I think that's going to be sort of an interesting matchup to see in terms of that particular thing. Then when you look at field goal percentage, it's on the Raiders' side. They're much better in terms of field goal percentage. Extra point percentage is more so on the Oakland Raiders side as well. And punting average is more so on the Raiders. They pretty much have, I'm not sure if they're number 1 in the NFL when it comes to punting average, but a 99.84 score is pretty up there. So they're pretty good in terms of punting average, in terms of field position for that kind of perspective. But again, overall the data favors the Broncos, but it mostly favors the Broncos because of their defense. That's really all. The offense of the Raiders is better, but the defense is so good on the Broncos side, and their offense is able to do just enough to push them, to favor them, I guess, in terms of overall data. So then we look at other sort of data points. So now we're going to get into, I'm not going to focus too much on completion percentage stuff, but I just wanted to highlight some stuff. When you look at the Broncos offense versus the Raiders defense, the Broncos are below average when it comes to first down situations and second down situations when it comes to completion percentage. So if you want to ask, like, how can the Denver Broncos offense improve? First down, second down situations. Then when you look at the Oakland Raiders offense versus Denver Broncos defense in terms of completion percentage, if you were to ask where do the Raiders need to improve, it's third down situations. They're pretty much below average when it comes to third down completion percentage. So overall when it comes to completion percentage. So that's one area of the offense I think needs to improve, is getting completions in third down situations. Then when you look at rushing, so the Denver Broncos rushing offense versus the Oakland Raiders rushing defense, the Broncos are not favored when it comes to first down situations, but second down situations, overwhelmingly the Broncos have a big favor when it comes to second down situations in terms of the rushing offense versus the Raiders rushing defense. The Raiders have only really been good as a rushing defense when it comes to third down situations. So I think that pretty much the Broncos, if they can exploit that weakness on second down, I think the Broncos will have some advantages here for the most part, even though the Raiders will have advantages in first down situations and third down situations. Then when you look at the Oakland Raiders rushing offense versus the Denver Broncos rushing defense, overwhelmingly favors the Broncos. Again, rushing conversion rate has nothing to do with yardage. It has nothing to do with you getting 150 yards. A lot of yardage stuff, could come from big plays. If you get a 50-yard play, that doesn't account for the fact that you had 16 carries that led to nothing. This is about rushing efficiency. This isn't about how many yards you get as a rushing offense. So far the Raiders offense has been below average when it comes to getting first downs on first down, below average when it comes to getting first downs on second down per rush, and also about below average as well when it comes to third down situations, whereas the Broncos defense has been very good in terms of preventing first, second down, and third down situations. And I might add that this is the same sort of defense that the Raiders played last week against the Redskins. Similar markers. So this is going to be a big test for the Raiders. Can they work? Can they work? Can the passing offense really work when they don't have the run, when they don't have big plays with the run? Because they have to rely on those big plays for a lot of their rushing offense. So this is something that worries me a bit. If you're a Raiders fan, I'd be worried about this, is all I'm trying to say. Then, of course, when you look at passing situations with the Broncos and the Raiders, the Broncos are below average when it comes to first down situations, really below average. Like, the Broncos are one of the worst offenses in the NFL when it comes to creating first downs on second down with the pass, but they get it done on third down. So everything really comes on third down for them. First down situations, not so much. Second down, not so much. But everything comes on third down situations with them. So that is a big sort of thing. And the issue with the Raiders is that they're one of the worst defenses in terms of preventing conversions on third down. So this doesn't favor the Raiders that much in terms of this particular situation. Then, of course, when we look at the Oakland Raiders offense versus the Denver Broncos defense, the Raiders offense has been about average when it comes to creating first downs on first down, above average when it comes to creating first downs on second down, and below average when it comes to creating first downs on third down. But this favors the Denver Broncos defense. So not only does the Denver Broncos defense favor them when it comes to the running game, but it also favors the Broncos defense when it comes to the passing game. So this is definitely worrisome. Then we look at sacks. So this is basically the Broncos offense in terms of giving up sacks versus the Oakland Raiders defense. Most of the sacks on the Broncos have come in first down situations, and most of the sacks on the Raiders defense have come in first down situations. So I think that I think the Raiders defense will have some success, especially Khalil Mack. I think he'll have some success in this particular game. I think they're going to win this game, though. I do think that they need to, Khalil Mack needs to have like a 5-sack crazy game, if they really want to win this game, because of all the advantages that the Denver Broncos defense has against Oakland Raiders offense. And then, of course, when you look at sack rate of Oakland Raiders offense versus Denver Broncos defense, Most of the sacks that have given up on the Broncos by the Oakland Raiders have been in second down situations and third down situations. So not really first down situations, but most of the sacks have really come in those second and third down situations. And that's an area to kind of improve over the last 3 weeks. When you look at interception ratio, the Broncos mostly give up interceptions in first down situations, but this is the biggest issue with the Oakland Raiders. They have not had any interceptions this year for the most part. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to creating turnovers in terms of interceptions. That can't continue to happen. I don't know what they need to do. Honestly, I would start Shalom Lonnie at safety because he's a guy that had really high interception marks coming out of college. Maybe he might turn the tide of things, but this is a real issue, is when you can't turn over the football. Even a team that actually turns the football over a lot in terms of to the pass, if you can't match up with that, that's a problem. So the Raiders defense has to start creating turnovers with their defense. If they don't, if they just entirely rely on the offense, then they're not going to win this football game. They have to get turnovers as defense. Then, of course, when you look at the Oakland Raiders offense versus Denver Broncos defense, most of the interceptions for the Raiders offenses come in second down situations and third down situations for the most part. And this favors the Oakland Raiders offense, but it's pretty evenly matched to say the least, I think, overall in this game. So how do I feel about this particular match? Overall thoughts on this matchup. Well, I really don't know how I feel about this matchup because on the one hand, the Raiders have individual players like Khalil Mack, like all these other sort of guys that can take over football games and make games big. Trevor Siemian is a guy who does turn over the football over a lot. So there are things to exploit about this Denver Broncos offense, no doubt. It's not the most efficient offense in the NFL. It doesn't prevent sacks very well. It doesn't, it turns the football over a lot compared to the rest of the NFL. But the biggest strength of the Oakland Raiders team is that offense. It is heavily favored. It hinges on that offense working. If the Oakland Raiders offense doesn't work, you lose. Period. Look what happened against the Washington Redskins. And I look at the defensive markers of the Broncos, eerily similar to the Redskins in terms of preventing, basically having a really tough rushing defense on top of a pretty decent balanced passing defense. And I think ultimately I have to go with the Denver Broncos here. I think there is a way for the Oakland Raiders to win this. I think they need to create turnovers as a defense. Like, they have to create turnovers as a defense. Like, we're 3 weeks into the season, and there hasn't been a single interception by the Oakland Raiders side. That has to stop. That can't continue. They have to get picks. They have to get interceptions. They have to turn the football over. Give it to the... it doesn't matter if they give up a ton of yardage. They have to start creating turnovers to get the ball into Derek Carr's hands so he can put up points. If they don't do that, if Khalil Mack doesn't have a crazy 5-sack game on top of the defense doing something it hasn't done in the last 3 weeks, then I don't see the Oakland Raiders winning this game. So that's just my general feelings about it. The data prefers a Broncos victory. There is a way for the Oakland Raiders to win this game, but based on how both these teams have played in the last 3 weeks, it would take events that haven't happened yet in this season for that to happen. So, of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well if anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.